In this video, I'm going to share with you my personal story around gut issues and how I overcame them. How's it going, Absolute Weapons? I'm Phillip Gerard. I'm a gut health coach, I'm a strength coach, and I help men optimize their digestion, lose fat, and build muscle. If this is the kind of content that you want to see, please hit that subscribe button below. It helps me out more than you know. Now, if you stick around to the very end, I'm going to share with you a really helpful bonus. I'm going to give you a free nutrition guide that's going to help you choose the right diet for you depending on your symptoms. Now, my story is going to go all the way back to when I was about 16 years old. I'm going to start here because retrospectively, this is where I started to notice these digestive symptoms happening, even though at the time I obviously had no fucking idea. Now at 16, I remember getting a patch of pimples just under my lip here, and a week later I was completely covered. My face, my back, my shoulders, everywhere. Obviously really embarrassing, really insecure about it, and I had no idea what to do. Now I tried all the different body washes, face washes, whatever. Did that for a few months, nothing really changed. Then I went to the GP. The GP put me on amoxicillin, which is an antibiotic, and essentially I did that for 3 months and I ended up with heartburn. Now, a few things here, skin issues, that's linked back to the gut. So 1, gut issue. Number 2, I started getting heartburn, acid reflux. Now, was that a direct relation to the antibiotics? Maybe, but possibly I already had that in the first place, given that I did have acne already, but it may have just exacerbated the symptoms. Now, obviously antibiotics are gonna wipe out good and bad bacteria, so going down that path really didn't set me up for a good early 20s, which I'm about to get to. So fast forwarding to around 20, 24 years old, this is where a lot of the damage was done. I was in and out of the doctor's office getting antibiotics for a random amounts of different things. I really started to notice that I had a lot of fatigue and I was really tired all the time. I was playing sport twice a week. I would have trainings and I'd play footy on the weekends. And I worked as an electrician at the time, only working a 38-hour week. So I was quite surprised that I was always feeling quite flat, and when bringing this up to the GP, all they said was that I was doing too much. I pushed a little bit further and they did have a look at my blood work, although everything came back normal, even though I still felt like a bag of dicks. Now this is where I probably should have dug a little bit deeper, but I didn't really know what to do with my next steps. So from here, I just kind of left it, given the doctor told me that I was, after all, normal. From the ages of 25 to 28, my symptoms got progressively worse. Tired, lethargic, brain fog. Some days I could barely even get out of bed. I felt quite bad, quite lousy. On top of that, I had digestive issues from bloating, loose stools, constipation as well. Now, you might be thinking, well, what did you do to get on top of this? Well, think about this. I was 16, retrospectively, when I noticed my first gut issue. It didn't take me until I was 28 to realize that I actually had gut issues. So that's 12 years, over a decade of suffering with digestive symptoms and these psychological symptoms, and I didn't know about them. Now, this is very common for a lot of you guys, and this is why I'm here to help. Now, what I did to fix my gut issues, well, first and foremost, I outsourced to someone who had a better idea and understanding of this. Now, I was studying to be a personal trainer at the time, and so I hired Jake Dollashow as my coach, and he's still my mentor to this day, along with some other mentors as well. And so what we did was we analysed my blood work, and when we had a look at this, there are a lot more markers out than when I went to the GP and got my bloods assessed in my early 20s. The reason for this is we're looking at more of an optimal standpoint in terms of the blood markers. If you think about it, when you go to a GP, 1 in 2 people have a chronic health condition, and 70% are overweight or obese within Australia. Now, the most average person or common person going to a GP is either sick or they're old. Like, why else should you be going to a GP? And so this data then gets plotted on a bell curve, and the labs basically send out the different ranges that you should be falling into. So you're getting your blood work assessed against these ranges of essentially sick people. And so this is far from optimal. And so when we're looking at optimal blood markers, we're assessing the literature and we're looking at clinical experience here to determine what's going to be a tighter bracket for you to get to an optimally healthy level. Now, some of these markers are different between clinicians, and at the end of the day, we really just want to be understanding that this is a framework to work towards, and it's not an exact science, but it's much better for you to be working towards these much tighter blood marker ranges as opposed to the conventional ranges where they wait for you to fall outside their healthy bracket and then they can offer you some medication. Anyway, I digress. Back to me overcoming my gut issues. So we looked at the blood work, we looked at my symptoms, and we ascertained that I had a fungal overgrowth. Now, this was due to the excessive antibiotic use in my earlier years. Now, you may already know that antibiotics wipe out the good and bad bacteria, but what you might not know is that there are some opportunistic pathogens that are quite resistive against it. Now, Candida or yeast, for one, has this protective outer layer known as biofilm that protects it from antibiotic use. And so when Candida or yeast is in a healthy gut, it is relatively in check. But when you wipe out the good guys, it basically goes from living in the gutter to now living in a mansion, and it can go quite unopposed. That's the issue. You don't have to completely wipe out Candida from your system, but it is good to get on top of it so then it doesn't run rampant. It will lead to things like the symptoms I was experiencing, brain fog, lethargy, fatigue, all the digestive symptoms as well, but it can also lead to things like autoimmune conditions and inflammatory bowel diseases, so it's really something that you want to get on top of. Now, with Jake, I worked with him for 12 weeks. We looked at my nutrition, we tidied that up, we removed any trigger foods, and we brought down these symptoms. On top of that, we did some supplementation and we used some antimicrobials, which are basically a very strong and potent natural antibiotic without a lot of the collateral damage that does go along with the antibiotics themselves. On top of this, we did do some strength training as well, and this was my 12-week transformation with him. On the left, man, that was like 10 years of me trying to figure it out on my own, and then 12 weeks later, this was the result. So I was pretty happy with that at the time, and obviously I'm still progressing to this day, but it's good to see that from 10 years of me trying to figure this out to just asking for help, and the results you can get in 12 weeks is crazy. On the left, I was training ridiculous amounts. I was doing 2-a-days, running in the morning, lifting weights at night, and it was basically a recipe for disaster. I was obviously fatigued, and I had all these digestive symptoms and neurological symptoms from the Candida, which I had no idea about as well. And then on the right hand side, I started training 4 days a week in the gym, making sure I was having rest periods. And obviously, as I mentioned, I tidied up my diet and took some supplements as well. So when it comes to a gut protocol, the supplements are going to be important, but it's not going to be everything. So please keep that in mind when I go through the supplements and how it's laid out. So in the first phase, we wanted to do 3 things. One, we wanted to support any nutrient deficiencies. In my case, we noticed things like B vitamin issues in my blood work. Number 2, we want to make sure that the gut's healthy. So the integrity of the gut's really important. Imagine trying to build a house on sand. It's just not going to be a very good foundation, a good structure. So we want to heal the gut first before we start to wipe out any of these pathogens. And then number 3, we want to make sure we're reducing any inflammation that's present in the body. The second phase is where we want to start taking these gut reset supplements. These are the antimicrobials that I mentioned earlier. Then in the third phase, what we want to do here is make sure we're closing off the good work that we've already done and go through another gut healing phase. So again, we want to make sure the integrity of the gut is sound, but this time because we want to start introducing some good quality bacteria. So we're going to be eating things like kefir potentially, or kimchi or sauerkraut here, some fermentable foods to start to help bolster up some of the good bacteria again and make sure that the gut's in a nice position to be able to house them and allow the body to start getting to a really healthy, optimal state. Now, as I mentioned earlier, if you stuck around to the end, I was going to share with you a nutrition guide that's going to help you choose the right diet for you depending on your digestive symptoms. Now, this is what the guide looks like, and it's a really good place to start to help you to reduce these symptoms. Now, obviously, we're going to need to look into a lot further to actually figure out what's going on. And if you are feeling a little bit lost and you've tried diets before and you can only seem to manage symptoms but never actually fully get rid of them, on the last page, there's going to be a link where you can book in for a free strategy session with myself, and we can run you through your next possible steps and how we might be able to help. Now, for those of you that may be struggling with energy issues and you're not really sleeping too well, I've created a separate video where I run through the ultimate guide to better sleep. So if you're someone that's really low on energy and you're not sleeping too well, this is going to be the first place to start. So go check that video out. I'll see you on the next one.